Hi, I'm Michael,
And I'm Justin.
and this is our podcast where we discuss what we find interesting about the intersection of Web3 and digital security as we know it.
Between us, we have years of experience securing digital products and infrastructure, which has led us to be constantly curious about what's next.
Which is what this podcast is about, sharing our journey as we update our mental models for security in the next internet.
A lot's happened since we've last uploaded a podcast.
In the world?
Yes. As we record this on the 15th of November. Anyone who's been awake in the West for the last 3 months will know that obviously the US election has happened, and an upshot of the US elections, and even a headline that was trending before the elections took place, was prediction markets. Interestingly enough, the main product that people were using online, obviously prediction markets, betting houses, etc., was one called Polymarket. I came across this randomly through headlines and read a bit about it, but didn't investigate too much further because I'm not really a gambling man. Michael, you did independently, if I get this correct, and you found some interesting stuff.
Same kind of story, right? Just like seeing it in headlines or on Twitter or whatever. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's all about, the one particular event that people were betting money on. Yeah. So it's like, okay, this Polymarket thing, it's around. Honestly, at first, not too interested in it. Yeah, not a gambling man. No. Prediction markets have some like non-episode related thoughts about them and their effect on things and whatever. Mm-hmm. That made me just like not look into it at first. Agreed. But then what I saw, which I probably should have known already or figured out already, was that Polymarket is a blockchain product.
Yeah, and this surprised me too, because unlike many blockchain products or innovations in blockchain, that wasn't front and center. Its actual product was front and center. I swear, I wish I had a sound effect button for a round of applause, because we've all been waiting for something like this to break into the mainstream consciousness that isn't NFTs, and actually be a fully fledged product that just happens to run on blockchain and is supported by blockchain infrastructure. And funnily enough, it's a gambling website.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, right? So this is probably the first post NFT, like the first major crypto product that broke into public consciousness post NFTs.
Yeah.
Right?
And I do wonder how many of its users even know. Well, I guess when you go to pay in USDC, at that point, it's in crypto.
I don't know. I'm sure some people don't.
I genuinely, because even when you go onto the website itself, it's not there. It's not. There is no literature about Web3. There's none of the usual catch-all terms. Yeah. It's just place your bets, pay your money, and see what happens in the outcome, and collect your cash if you can, or lose your money if you can. Which, to be honest, as a Web3 bull, is exactly how I like my products, quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you count this? Would you count this as a DeFi product? Would you count this as a financial product?
A DeFi. Oh, yes, I would count it as a DeFi product, but that's because of my bias after reading Vitalik's latest blog post about it, because he kind of classifies it as a DeFi product as well. The reason I classify it as a DeFi product is in how it works, right? In how it basically creates a market of odds, and it uses something that I still don't understand called a central limit order book in order to provide liquidity for the betting. So that a CLOB in DeFi, decentralized finance, is a core component of decentralized finance. You don't have a decentralized finance protocol without a CLOB. So to me, by definition, the fact that it uses one of those, it's a decentralized finance product, except it's consumer facing, and it's non-crypto native consumer facing, which I'm telling you, well done that man for getting that going. So yeah, that's what this podcast is going to be about. We basically found out about Polymarket. We're interested in how it works. Obviously, being the security professionals, and it's like where can this be exploited, if it can be exploited at all? At what level of abstraction can it be exploited? So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah. Anything else, Michael?
It is. No, I don't think so. I think you convinced me that it's a DeFi product. I wasn't sure at first. Yeah,
go on. Sorry, I didn't mean.
No, it's fine. I wasn't sure at first. I was like, is it like? Yeah, definitely underneath it. I think it's kind of unambiguous that it is one. Like, it's creating a market, and people. The primary product is interacting with a basically financial market.
Yeah.
So yeah, fair enough. I was kind of hoping it wasn't, so it could also be like it's also, but it feels different, doesn't it?
It does feel different because of the consumer facing nature of it, and it's like. But yeah, that it does feel different. because it doesn't lean on that. So it's the same reason why we like the fact that it doesn't lean on the blockchain thing so heavily in order to capture an audience. It doesn't lean on the fact that it's decentralized. In fact, there's no DeFi. There's no mention of DeFi or finance or anything like that. Even markets. I don't even think the word markets is on the page. It's just place your bet. Do you think, like I was on there yesterday and it's like, do you think Moana will gross X amount? Moana 2 will gross X amount on its first week release date. It's not. But then I guess what we need to understand there is betting shops are financial institutions in some ways, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like, is that traditional finance? Like, no, right?
No.
Is like a lottery like traditional finance?
Ooh,
like, kind of depends on what way you're looking at it, I guess. But anyway,
I think that's a really good conversation, because also you get into like game theory, because then auctions, right? And the different types of auctions and game theory, are they financial products, financial experiences, financial process? I don't know what the correct word would be there, but yeah, I think there's like
something to think about.
Yeah, definitely.
But maybe stepping back, like I think we want to do in this episode. First, we'll explain a little bit more, like prediction markets. What are they? What's the difference between them and like a sports book kind of thing, maybe? Or what do we think the difference is? And then we'll talk about prediction markets and this particular prediction market, Polymarket, on the blockchain. So what makes this a blockchain product? How does this product work on the blockchain? And then we'll talk about threats, maybe, or like there was kind of an interesting thread I was following down. Kind of, I think thoughts will not be fully formed, but we'll have some discussion about it. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so prediction markets, like what are they, right? So yeah, I mean, basically a prediction market is a place where you put money down on some event happening or not happening, or some like future thing happening or not happening. So like in a traditional, like, most people are probably most familiar with either like casinos or sports betting. And in those, you place a bet on some future outcome and you expect either like a positive or a negative return, right? So like, it's going to land on, I don't know anything about these things. It's going to land on black or whatever, right? Or this team's going to win, right? So we're familiar with usually a model where some central player, like the house, or the like the bookie or whatever, I don't know, it's like 100 different words for this kind of person, sets the odds themselves. Old school, it's, I don't know, based on their gut feeling or something, I guess.
Yeah, I've always wondered that, because
New
even
school,
when
I'm sure it's based on like huge amounts of data analysis, right?
Maybe it is. It probably is. But like just random tidebite, I was watching some random Roman drama last week, and they basically had betting odds on the chariot races, and they're just where they pull those numbers from, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess past performance, but go on.
Yeah, and I think like there's kind of like an ideal theoretical way in which the place where you set the odds, in an ideal world, like the place where you set the odds attracts equal betting interest on both sides of the odds. Like you are kind of essentially making a market.
Yes.
So you try to set like, and then, you take a cut, both sides have equal interest, and that kind of balances things out.
Yeah.
So a prediction market is like that.
Yep.
But it's like kind of broader scope, right? It's about like events, and usually like the ones that get the most attention are events that happen in the news.
Yeah.
Will this person win the election or not? Like spoiler alert for what are the main topics going to be.
Yeah.
But even other things like will the price of this be above or below that on this date? So it can really be like an arbitrary thing in the future, right?
It can be so arbitrary. If you go on the website,
or like you're saying, like a movie, right? Will this movie gross this amount?
Movie opening weekend. Who's going to win El Clasico? Are the Canadians going to win the Stanley Cup?
They're not. They're far from that.
Michael, you got opinions.
So a prediction market like looks at this whole thing and says like, this looks like a market. We're matching buyers and sellers of like kind of these odds. And there's like basically a market clearing point where the buyers and the sellers are matched. So in a way, like you don't actually need this centralized person saying the odds are I don't know what odds are expressed in 60% or whatever, right?
They'll say like 3-1 or 2-1
there,
or 5-1.
there you go.
Man's 60%.
Not the right person to be leading this episode.
You've never been in a bookie shop in your life. No. I have been in 1 or 2 as a kid, but
but it looks at that and says, hey, this is a market. There's a market clearing price. Yeah. We're matching buyers and sellers, and we can run this basically like a market.
Yeah.
Okay. So that doesn't have to be on the blockchain.
No, that doesn't.
Lots of markets do not exist on the blockchain. In fact, the first prediction markets were mostly out of like academic institutions who wanted to study their behavior, and they got some special like approvals from, like it's a highly regulated kind of space, right? So they got some special approvals to run because they're like at universities and whatever.
Yeah.
And so they ran like kind of small scale academic focused prediction markets. And that goes back a few decades, I think.
So can I pause you there a second?
Yeah.
I may be putting you on the spot here. What were they hoping to study? What hypothesis were they testing when they were trying to run these small scale prediction markets?
I think it's a lot of like economics focused kind of stuff. So, and like, well, economics in like the broad sense. So it's like a lot of it is about forecasting. Like the question is, how accurate are these markets at predicting events?
Okay, got
you. So like people who, again, like elections are the topic, right? A lot of forecasting happens around elections. Like this person is this likely to win. That forecasting is based mostly on polling, statistical trends. They have some, proprietary model that they're using, and they come up with some number.
Yeah.
Is that more or less accurate than getting 1,000 people to bet on it?
Yeah.
Right. And there's some like economic ideas about, well, like when people are actually putting money on something, they behave differently than when they're not.
Yeah.
And does that make them behave like more accurately with what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Is there like a wisdom of the crowds sort of thing that you're pulling out from that? So I think that it's kind of like trying to get more accurate forecasting of events in the future, I think is kind of the idea.
So, and that's kind of where I expected you to go, because that's kind of where I'm coming from when I read the premise of this. It's almost like digitizing the wisdom of the crowd. And it's interesting to see where this could go.
Yes.
We'll get to that later in the podcast because, as I said, spoiler alert, I did read. Vitalik does have some interesting thoughts on this that I never crossed my mind, especially when you...
I did not read that article yet, so I'll be excited to hear
it's right. It's really, so, when AI comes into the picture, you get some interesting outcomes.
Yeah, okay.
But
we'll revisit the AI and blockchain episode.
Yes, we definitely will need to.
Okay, but this one I'm talking in particular, Polymarket, is on the blockchain because you can also construct markets. In fact, you can construct very many different kinds of markets on the blockchain. So basically, there isn't a centralized, like Polymarket is not saying this is this likely to happen. Like the Polymarket guy or person or whatever is not setting any odds.
Nope.
Right. What they're doing is creating a market, and then people who want to bet on that outcome happening buy and sell shares that represent that event happening.
Yeah.
And that sets, basically from that you get what people think the probability of it is.
Yeah, basically the amount of shares they pay for, it represents the probability, the confidence in their probability, or the confidence in their belief that an outcome will happen. And that's where you get a market, because you've got multiple players and you can have multiple outcomes. So it's a two-sided, three-sided market. It becomes quite interesting, to say the least. Go ahead.
Yeah. So like technically, Polymarket has they run their own layer 2 on top of Ethereum. Hopefully all these details are correct from when I researched them.
Yeah. So they run on Polygon.
Polygon.
Yeah.
So this is an L2 on top of Ethereum.
Yeah.
And when you're transacting on Polygon to interact with the market to make your bets, it's a stable coin, so it's in USDC. And the thing that you're purchasing or selling are like shares, right? That kind of represent this event.
Yeah.
And those shares are priced between 0 and 1 USDC.
So that it's the shares that represent, the shares represent the likelihood. That's why it's between 0 and 1, right?
So the shares are priced between 0 and 1, and the price of the share is set by the market.
There we
which is the interpretation of the probability of the event happening.
There we go.
So if there's more, I'm going to get this the wrong way around, but you'll know what I mean. Like if there's more like buying pressure on it, it means I haven't thought that through. It means either it's becoming more or less likely because the price is moving. I guess there's more buying pressure, the price is moving up, right?
Yes.
So it's becoming more and more likely.
It's becoming more likely, yeah.
If there's more selling pressure, if people want to sell their shares more, the price is going down. So it's becoming less and less likely according to the interpretation.
I'm not sure, actually. No.
Did I do that the wrong way around?
Because you can buy yes or no, right? So you can say, will Michael trip up tomorrow? Yes or no. It can be 50 cents and 50 cents, which means it's equally likely, or it'd be 60-40, as in 60 cents, yes.
Oh, gotcha. There's two sides of the...
Yeah, there's two sides of the actual predicting the outcome. So that's where it gets interesting from a financial perspective, right? Because you can arbitrage the difference if you're clever. Or if you're a sophisticated investor, you can start to take advantage of people who have less access to information, which is kind of the whole efficient market hypothesis. But basically, you can bet both ways on an outcome as to whether you think it's coming. And that's...
So you're saying there's two sets of shares, sets of shares representing the positive, the event negative will happen, and then there's another set of shares representing it won't happen.
And that price
both those are traded separately.
Yes.
Okay. But then the principle is still the same in that there's buying and selling pressure on both sides of that.
Yeah, because you can sell your shares before the outcome actually happens.
Yes.
Because if you think, okay, I now have less confidence in my predicted outcome. So this is a financial trading platform and any other. Once you start to get sophisticated about it, anyway. So carry on. Sorry.
No, it's not sorry. It's I was saying incorrect things. So
it's okay. It's all right. So go on.
But okay. So like the upshot of that is there's these shares that are priced between 0 and 1 based on the outcome of the market, like based on what they're clearing at in the market. That represents the probability. Yeah. So to me, the really interesting part of this whole thing is, and like the original kind of like brain bug that I got when I heard like this is a decentralized blockchain thing and not like a centralized thing is, how do you resolve this? Like, how do you, at the end of the day, how do you encode into the blockchain the thing that happened, right? Because if this is like an old school centralized thing or whatever, the bookie or the casino or the house just says that's the outcome, right?
Yep, they do. They're the ultimate authority on what.
They're the ultimate authority, and you know that I'm sure almost always tracks with what actually happened out in the real world. If they say this team won, that means that team did in fact win, because I'm sure they would get into a fair amount of trouble if that wasn't the case.
They wouldn't have a business otherwise.
But there is a slight like distinction there, right? The event happened in reality. But the bets settle based on what the clearinghouse says, based on what the authority says.
Yeah.
It's not like there isn't like a metaphysical way in which it is directly tied to the event itself.
Agreed.
So we have to do that same thing. Like Polymarket has to do that same thing, but without being a central authority, right? Because this is decentralized and
decentralized. Yeah.
Okay. So how do they do that?
So this is interesting. This was actually, and this is where I really got my juices flowing. They have these things called oracles, and many a blockchain literature was talking about oracles. I always ignored them, had no idea what you're talking about. But basically, an oracle is a way of taking real world data and putting it on the blockchain. And there are a bunch of different oracles. I think each layer one tends to have a selected oracle for whatever reason. Sometimes in actually the circumstances in which I have told about blockchains needing oracles is for betting and gaming, for randomization and things like that. So what Polymarket does is it uses an oracle called UMA, Universal Market Access, and what they as I said, their whole function is to take real world data. What's the temperature in Ottawa today? What is the weather like in South Africa? Who won the derby, the West London derby in the Premiership last week, and literally codify it in such a way that it's on the blockchain so that everyone knows that this has been verified. It's a real event. It's on the blockchain. There are different types of oracles, but most of the oracles there's different types of oracles based on the mode in which they run. So you have what the oracle that Polymarket uses, the UMA one, is called an optimistic oracle, and it's called optimistic because it is assumed that the data that the oracle records is correct unless it is disputed. And so this is kind of where when you go and look at these oracles websites and their nomenclature, the thing they talk about is being a statement, a truth statement machine or a truth machine, basically. Long story short, as I said, they take analog data, convert it digital, put it on their blockchain, make it verifiable for all the world to see. And they also have a process in which someone can dispute, well, actually, no, that person didn't win, that team didn't win for whatever reason, and they have a process around that. We'll get to that in a second because that's where it gets fun. But long story short, oracles are the name of the game. The oracle that Polymarket uses called Universal Market Access. They have a token associated with it, which behaves more like a governance token than a crypto token. Not your crypto podcast. We don't care about the crypto part. But a governance token, now we're talking. So basically, that's kind of how this works. So yeah, you have this optimistic oracle, and then you have a dispute process as well around it that allows someone to say, actually, I think you've recorded that result inaccurately. And this is where it gets spicy. Is there anything I've missed, do you think, about the whole UMA and the oracle concept?
No, I don't think there's anything you missed, but I think like just to make it kind of clear, right? When we say they, like when you're describing like a blockchain system or a decentralized system and you hear the word they,
yeah,
you should always be thinking like who is the they?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not going to be what you think. Like when you say they, you think there's somebody out there who controls this thing.
Oh yes, sorry.
Who is putting it in, right?
Yeah, so it's
like UMA, like to be clear, this is another decentralized blockchain product.
Yep. 100% decentralized.
Also runs on Ethereum.
Yes, it's Ethereum.
Right. Yeah.
It's on Ethereum. Its token runs on Ethereum.
And it has a protocol in which anybody who is using their their protocol, I guess, can propose a statement as being true.
Yes.
And then there's a amount of time, semi-configurable. I think there's some limits or whatever, but there's an amount of time in which another user of the system can dispute that is true.
So right? Yes, so there's a couple things here. Correct. So going back to the they, so for our listeners out there, the they that Michael's talking about is anyone who owns the token is considered a participant in the system, and therefore they are the they. Anyone who buys a UMA token right now becomes the token holders are the they. This is important for later for Michael's train of thought in terms of where potential exploits can come, but that's the they we're talking about. It's not an institution. It's not. Sometimes they tend to have governance around foundations, but they can't govern. They just govern the execution of the thing, not what the output is. So that's a different story for another day. But yes, token holders are basically the they in this point. I've lost my train of thought. Where were you going? Oh yeah, the disputing process. So there is a time period. I'm guessing every oracle has its own configured time period, but in this case, I think once a statement has been verified as true and recorded to the blockchain, a disputer, another token holder, who puts up. So basically what happens is when I say a statement is true, Justin is recording this podcast, it goes onto the oracle. I have to, in order to put that and record that on the blockchain, I have to also put up a bond, and that bond is made up of that token. So the UMA token, I have 500 UMA tokens. I put them up at the same time saying, this is the bond, this is the statement, as verified as true. Michael then can say, actually, Justin's not recording a podcast right now. So I dispute that. He has to put up a bond of 500 tokens, and then it goes to a vote of everybody who's participating. That's why, to my mind, I may be incorrect here. Anyone who's deeper into the blockchain ecosystem can happily write in and tell us where we're wrong. But this functions more like a governance token, in closer to decentralized autonomous organizations, which is a whole other thing, more than so just a crypto token you invest in and hope it goes up. So basically Michael has to put up a bond equal to that of my bond, and then basically it goes to a vote, which is a two-stage process, which we shan't bore you with now, but it's quite clever from a privacy perspective. Yes. So when we eventually do get around to our privacy podcast, I really liked the mechanism they had here with the commit and reveal. But yeah, so then everyone votes and says Michael's right, Justin's right. If Michael's wrong in him saying that I was not recording a podcast, he loses his entire stake, which is the $500 bond. With a 500 UMA token bond. And the whole purpose of that is, again, behavioral economics. If you're going to dispute something, you better put your money where your mouth is. And if you're going to say something did happen, you better put your money where your mouth is. So it's incumbent on the person who's ever trying to write to that blockchain or put a statement on that blockchain to actually have done their research and therefore be willing to put their money where their mouth is. So that's kind of it. This voting period can go on for between 24 and 48 hours. There can be multiple rounds. I'm guessing if the vote's deadlocked, there may be multiple rounds, or if someone.
It's majority vote, is it? It's just 50 plus 1.
I think it is. I think so. I think it actually is. Actually, that's the one bit that is missing from my research. But yeah, the UMA token stuff was very interesting because it cannot be overstated how important oracles are to systems like Polymarket.
Yes.
Like, from my whisperings of people who work in the blockchain industry, oracles are very hard to build and secure, and you have to be on your P's and Q's. They're basically the PCI DSS, the PCI module. They're basically your hardware cryptography of your centralized infrastructure. Like, you need to know what you're doing around this to make sure, because people are going to trust this. And people. Yeah, I'm not even going to say users or abstract it away. People are going to trust this. People are going to build systems based on this and based on the trust they have.
Based on top of it. Put on top of it. Yeah. It's like a stack, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like when we talk about, like stack models of infrastructure, and this is at the bottom and, stuff is built on top of it. This is the same thing, but in this domain, right?
Yep. 100%.
I think that's spot on. The UMA stuff, when you like load up the website, like the very first thing is like there's this big, text that says UMA is a decentralized truth machine or something like that. And like that is like absolutely classic Web3 stuff. That is like,
I'm thinking that was
what an amazing
second
statement.
bull run, third
we
bull
live
run.
in like what a world we live in. But like the upshot here is this is what is determining truth about an event happening in Polymarket, right? So Polymarket itself, one, it doesn't set the odds. Two, it doesn't say whether something happened or not.
Yeah, exactly.
It relies on UMA, which is a process governed by a bunch of token holders to say whether something happened or not, to determine truth.
Yeah.
And like there is a way, like it's probably, I don't know, a little like too cute by half or whatever. but basically what we've done is encode like truth is majority vote. That's the upshot of this. Truth is majority vote. Right.
Yeah. There are so many places we can go with that philosophically. Especially
that's I mean, maybe we will one day or whatever. But like for the purpose of this system, that's kind of what it boils down to. Again, a little bit simplistic. Oh, but also, it's not majority vote. This is important, I think. It's not majority vote of people. This isn't like an election. It's not majority vote of people, right?
Yeah.
This is majority vote of tokens.
Yes.
Which is different. Because tokens do not map one-to-one to people.
No, they do not.
So this is also another, like, this should get you kind of keyed off thinking about centralization of token power, basically, as something to be thinking about, right?
Yes, 100%.
So truth is majority vote of tokens. Interesting.
And so that's the decent overview. I think we should jump. I mean, you kind of foreshadowed it there. Truth is majority vote of tokens. So what could possibly go wrong here? You got to own a token you got to pay to play. But the problem is you're paying to play about real world events, and real world events that include people who are not token
that
holders,
are in the future.
That are in the future.
That have not happened yet.
That have not happened. They're not participants in this system, but there is a lot of money riding on this system. And you can also say that the more people who are involved in betting could technically, there is a world in which they could also influence the events because they are betting on something in the future. That's also a complaint that has been battered around. It took me a while for me to get my head around it, admittedly, but I was like, oh no, I can see it now. But anyway, let's come to your main threat that you can see happening when it says, okay, it's majority, truth is by majority token holder, basically.
Yeah, and I think okay, so there's going to be a sense in which the threats we talk about here are like fairly theoretical. Like I don't know that any of these have happened.
Yeah.
If they have, that would be super interesting to look at, right? But like, and you kind of planted a little flag about this earlier on when you talked about what level of abstraction are we talking about threats here, right? Because we're not talking about a threat that is like there was a bug in the smart contract that runs Polymarket or some bug in the UMA protocol or whatever.
No, we're not
like
talking about that at
these
all.
things are what they are. Polymarket is a market where you can bet on events happening or not happening. UMA is a oracle where it encodes truth based on its known process, right? Based on its known proposing, disputing, and voting process, right? Okay, so but one interesting thing that happens and happened, right, is some events attract a disproportionate amount of interest, right? Particularly the 2024 U.S. election. I think I don't know. I didn't check the numbers or whatever. Did I check the numbers? Did I have a note about the numbers here? I didn't. I don't think.
No.
But like vast amounts of money wagered on this single event, right? Which means vast amounts of money to be gained and or lost on the outcome of this single event, right?
Yeah.
So there is, I think, kind of an interesting situation this stack, this like product stack can get into, product security guys, right?
Yeah, of course.
This product stack can get into where the economic value that is placed into the event, like placed into wagering on the event, the way I think about it is it becomes top heavy.
Yeah.
Like the amount of value that can be made or lost kind of at the very top of that product stack at the event, huge.
Yep.
Lower down in the stack is the UMA truth-telling, truth-making system, really, which is also monetary, right?
Yes.
Because it's based on tokens, right?
It's based on tokens, which have a value.
Which have a value in which you can create and trade, presumably, I don't know.
You can buy and trade. Yeah, you can definitely buy. You can go on a decentralized exchange and buy and sell UMA.
So, like, I think it is like theoretically possible for there to be a situation where some actor who has placed a certain amount, like a large amount of value in the event, stands to lose more money than it would take them to start participating in the truth making process in a significant way, and maybe even influence.
Yeah.
Because again, like it's that top versus bottom. Like the top is super big, the bottom is smaller. And in fact, I think it was the case. I did look up the numbers at one point, and I think it was the case that the overall amount wagered on the 2024 U.S. election outcome in Polymarket was greater than basically the market cap of UMA.
Yeah, I think that was the case. I think it was. I think it was north of $500 million was wagered, if not more, and the total market cap, as I checked as of yesterday, for UMA token was 203 million.
Yeah, so like there's like we'll get into maybe practical reasons why this would not happen or whatever, but there is a theoretical possibility that like I stand to lose immense, or people, me and other people who all share an economic incentive in this outcome of this event, stand to lose more than it would cost us to basically do it's like a 50+1 attack on the chain, more or less.
Yeah.
Not on the chain, but on the protocol that's running on the chain.
Protocol,
the voting protocol that's running on the chain. If we can get a controlling interest, basically, it actually could make economic sense for us to do that, to attempt that, to save the value that we're going to lose because we didn't. This event went the other way.
Yeah,
right?
the way
I feel like I'm struggling a little bit to explain that, but I think that's kind of the sketch of it.
To me, it makes perfect sense. So I'm going to replay it back to you. Long story short, north of $500 million wagered on it. I stand to make a lot of money or lose a lot of money should it go opposite my direction. I basically involve myself by buying the UMA. So all I have to do is influence the actual oracle's result. I don't have to influence the real world result. I just need to influence the oracle result.
That's why it's important that there's a difference there. And that difference exists in both the centralized world and the decentralized world. But the difference is in the decentralized world, you can be both the person wagering on the event and the person participating in the truth making process.
And that is absolutely fascinating. And I find it interesting because again, this topic comes up a lot with you and I on this podcast. It's about that spectrum of decentralization.
Yes.
Because to my mind, when you first raised this to me, my initial reaction was, well, it wasn't, you didn't even raise this issue. You raised the process. You're like, oh, by the way, I think there's something going on here with this UMA thing. I was like, well, why are they allowing any token holder to be able to, why are they allowing any token holder to be able to participate in the disputing process or even in the truth telling process? What's the word? The truth recording process.
Yeah.
I personally think that should be more centralized to trusted individuals, such as the validators, for example. If they are, I don't know if they're a proof of stake node. I think they are proof of stake.
I think I have that in the node. No, I have that for Polymarket, but not for UMA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think it's proof of stake, though. I think you're right.
Yeah, so if it's proof of stake, then you could just go to the actual trusted validators, because validators have to put up a lot of collateral just to be. And if they behave in a way that isn't exactly truthful, they get their stake slashed. There are financial incentives for them to actually behave properly. Whereas, and therefore, it's harder. I imagine, in my simplistic mind, it's harder for me as someone who's placing bets, unless I mean, there's nothing stopping a validator playing both sides again, but I think it's less likely.
I think it depends on honestly, I think it's a philosophical question. Sorry, I don't mean to you can finish if you want.
No. So basically, I was just going to say I was surprised that they decentralized the truth recording process as much as they did when it's so important and so many things depend on it. Philosophically, you can kick off. Go on.
So one I think where I'm coming from is I'm not at all surprised that they decentralized it as much as they did, because that's the philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question you're getting at is it more secure, or is it more does it have more integrity to trust a smaller group of highly invested participants?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or does it have more integrity to trust a much broader group of lower invested participants, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's not a empirical question.
No.
That's based on what you're trying to do in the blockchain thing, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And the people who create these systems are typically the maximalists of the decentralized.
Yes,
no, it's obviously better to distribute the trust even more, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's I think your proposal is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's philosophically not aligned with not as much aligned with the ethos of some of this stuff.
No, it's
right?
not. But I think there's a point at which we have to acknowledge that the middleman has some role to play in arbitrating this important things like these. I think I'm now coming around to the fact that, okay, there is a reason why the middle was invented in the first place. And there is obviously a discussion to be had about the amount of power they can control and the risks that they're subject to. And every system is subject to risks, and everything is a trade-off, as we always say in security. So effectively, you're basically optimizing for a system to function a type of way, with the most amount of acceptable risk. Whereas here, when we've completely get rid of the middleman, well, then now this pops up, because now you've lowered the barrier of entry for powerful actors to capture almost the process.
Maybe, right? I think that's even maybe, because I think it depends. It's not impossible to capture a lower amount of higher trust interests as well.
It's not.
And I honestly don't know what to say about the calculus of that as compared to, because maybe that's a good segue a little bit into practically, right? The way a threat like this would play out wouldn't just be, I buy literally all of the tokens and then vote all of myself, right?
No.
There's reasons why that doesn't work. One, not all tokens are for sale all the time, right? Not everything is for sale.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the market liquidity of UMA is, but regardless, that's the case. Two, as you push things to their extreme when you're interacting with the market, it changes the market itself. So as you buy up, the price goes up, it gets more expensive. So market cap isn't like a number that's given from on high that is like indisputable. It's like a dynamic concept that responds, like the market cap of something also responds to market conditions.
Yes, it does.
At scale. So like those two factors kind of are on the side of like this gets harder to push out to do. But then there's also factors on the side that this is easier to do. And those factors are I don't need to buy 100%.
No.
I don't even need to buy 50 plus 1% necessarily.
No.
And you know, this is the same logic that's in like activist investing stuff, right? I don't need the controlling interest. I need enough of an interest that puts me over the edge where I, along with everybody else who is going to vote my way and who I maybe have influence to vote my way.
Exactly.
Reaches that threshold. But usually that's a much, much lower number than an actual controlling interest.
Especially given the timelines of something like the US election. The moment Harris was announced, you can kick in gear slowly but surely. Also, it's all transparent, so you're not going to do it from one wallet. You're going to basically split it up. But agreed, 100%. You don't even need to do 50 plus 1. You just need to get enough of a controlling share that tips the balance in your favor.
And then I think there's another angle too, which is like we're talking about one particular event, which was like the most high visibility, the most high profile event with the most amounts and blah, 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 like all that kind of stuff, right? But there's a lot of stuff on here.
There is
on Polymarket.
Oh,
and it's arbitrary. Right? Anybody can put anything up.
Yep.
Like you create, like Polymarket doesn't create the events either. The events are like user created, right?
They are
right.
user created. Yep.
And so not all events have this amount of interest. But they could potentially still be like top heavy in that way. And
exactly.
so not all events have that amount of interest, both at the Polymarket level and at the UMA level, because you know, for lower profile, lower liquidity, lower whatever events, could you sneak something through UMA without it being disputed?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe.
Very good question.
Maybe. Or if it does get if you do decide to dispute something, not everybody's going to show up to vote. Right? It's not 100%. That's the other thing. It's not 100% of all tokens that exist are voting, right?
Yeah.
There's a time period in which a subset of tokens who choose to vote vote. Yeah. And that is also probably fluctuates a lot, probably with interest in the actual event.
Yes,
right?
100%.
So actually it would be interesting. I haven't looked at the numbers, but it must be there. Like, what was the actual market conditions around the election UMA event?
Yeah.
Did somebody propose? Did it get proposed and it went undisputed? I kind of doubt that.
Yeah.
Maybe though. I don't know. I don't know what my gut should say about this. If it did get disputed, what were the vote results? Right.
Yeah.
That would be it. Without these are all things we should have looked up.
Yeah.
Prior to recording this episode, but didn't.
No, we're almost hitting 45 minutes, so this is perfectly fine. But no, basically your point stands. Your point definitely stands. I think the threat is proportional to the interest in the event, and the interest in the event is a function of the money. The interest of the event can be represented by the amount of money based on an event. And then you start to look at the protocol, and the protocol does look like it has some threats or some risks.
Yeah, and I think like the protocol isn't necessarily designed for these risks not to happen, right? Like I think in a way the protocol is like what it is, right?
Yeah.
It is what it says on the tin. It's not like hiding anything, or it's not like unknown that this is the state.
There's no way
this is the way the Oracle works.
Yeah.
And if we all can't agree on what truth is by voting on something, like it's kind of our bad, right? or whatever.
I mean, it's a damning indictment of humanity. The thing is, I think it's not even so much as needing to agree, it's when we agree. Right? Because, for example, the thing about the election was a lot of people like midnight EST time. They were like, okay, we can call it. We're done here. Whereas...
That's true. That would be another good point, right? Like when do we decide that it's true? Do we decide that it's true when the news... Well, actually, you know what? I think the Polymarket event might have been specific about that.
Yeah.
I think it might have been when these three like news agencies officially called it.
Yeah, I know the ones you're talking about, yeah.
But you know, the amount of ambiguity that's in these events does let a lot of that happen. Because if it wasn't that, it was just who wins the election. Well, is it when it gets called? Is it when the electors are chosen? Is it when it gets certified?
Exactly.
I shouldn't know this much about US
politics. Mate,
I shouldn't know this much.
I think you should. Yeah. I genuinely do think you should. Yeah, like it, and so that's
where. Is it when the swearing in happens, right? Because and there is,
as I'm on Polymarket
there's probably
right now,
a separate event on Polymarket right now that's like who's going to be sworn in, because
yes,
it still might not be.
Is. I was just
outcome,
about
right?
to say there is. I could literally send you that link for that. Yeah. So all of this is actually fascinating, and it gets more interesting when you talk about the top heaviness and interest about these events making it worth your while, because what Vitalik, if I'm not mangling his interpretation or his point of what he was trying to say in his previous podcast? No, he did a blog post.
Blogcast.
Was that, blogcast, exactly. Was that when AI gets involved, so before it was, you're incentivized really to partake in big events because you get a bigger payoff. And there's no point you researching a bunch of random bits of information on the outcomes of something small where not that many people are interested in the first place, because the market needs participants in order to give you volume. But when AI comes into it and can do all that research for you and can automate all the betting processes for you and then can basically arbitrage time for you, then you get into a much more interesting scenario. He looks at it from a perspective of what my understanding, my simplistic understanding of his point was, it now puts prediction markets to the test of, we can test the efficacy of the wisdom of the crowd basically on much smaller scales and much shorter time scales. And that can make it more that makes it more interesting for knowledge and trusting institutions, etc., etc. Whereas I'm like, I just see automated exploitation basically, because I can be like, okay, fine, let me go into something completely, what is obscure to me, Sri Lankan elections. They're obscure to me because I'm not based in that hemisphere, but I can go in and probably automate exploitation in terms of, okay, well, X amount of people think it's going to go this way. I can make a bet going either way. I can automate the betting process. Then I can go and look at the UMA. We'll see which way that's going, the liquidity in the market, how much do I need to. I think that's where this is going to get even more interesting. And I think it's only going to become a more interesting problem as Polymarket gets even bigger. And it has, because it hit headlines. Like, I found out about it in mainstream media, the traded MSN.
Old school.
I found out in like
reading your paper, morning paper with your coffee.
Right, with my coffee. Yeah, exactly. My slippers and my dressing gown. It was actually crazy to see. So I think this is going to be one to watch for sure. Shout out to them for actually executing, because again, it's not easy to execute a product of this scale and what this does. It obviously has courted a little bit of controversy, which we don't really care about here, but yes. But at the same time, as I said, I recommend any listeners to go and just take a look at polymarket.com. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. This was a great discussion and a fascinating one, and again took us to our chairs of philosophy once again. So Michael, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. No, maybe we will. I don't know if there's a follow-up here, but there's some things I'm definitely going to look into more after.
Definitely.
Yeah.
100%. All right. Well, we want to say thank you for spending the last 49 odd minutes with us, if you've managed to stay all the way through. And I guess we'll catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.